I have never seen a car generate so much interest as the new 300 series. The stories we've published on carsguide.com.au to date have broken traffic records left, right and centre. But despite finally going on sale, Toyota still can't promise when you'll be able to park one in your garage. Make sure you keep an eye on carsguide.com.au for any updates on that front, but for now, thanks to its Australian media launch, I can finally tell you what the finished product is like to drive, I can dissect the entire Australian model lineup, and fill in any of the details we were still missing when we published the great Byron Mathioudakis' prototype review back in August. Is the big LandCruiser still the best all-rounder on the market? And does it live up to those massive expectations? Keep watching.
But first, there's a lot of detail to go through, so I'll split this video into chapters with all the timecodes here, so you can skip ahead to anything you're particularly interested in. And if you're watching this on YouTube, there are chapter markers in the timeline below to make it even easier.
And as always, you can read a lot more detail in my full review on the CarsGuide site, so please click on the link below.
And if you're not sure if the new LandCruiser is right for you, we've reviewed hundreds of other SUVs and off-roaders, so if you want to keep abreast of any new ones on the market, hit subscribe and the bell icon so you don't miss any of our new videos. We've known for a couple of months now that the new 300 series has jumped in price, like a lot of new models lately. But the $7,000 to $10,000 price rises are spread across a broader lineup than before, and there's a lot going on with its all-new design from top to bottom to help justify it. It's interesting to note that the 300 series lineup isn't the usual pattern of more features the more you spend, with some trim levels specifically focused on certain customers and use cases, so watch carefully for the details. Like before, you can pick the base GX by its 17-inch steel wheels and big black snorkel. This is the one you'll see wearing police signage beyond the black stump. As we've called out before, it no longer gets the barn door tailgate, but still gets rubber on the floor and in the boot instead of carpet. Equipment levels include a leather steering wheel, comfy cloth trim, active cruise control, but you only get most of the important safety gear. The base multimedia screen is on the small side at 9 inches, but it finally comes with CarPlay and Android Auto, which is still corded, unlike the wireless that's starting to pop up on most new models. The GXL loses the snorkel but adds key details like 18-inch alloys, roof rails and alloy side steps. It's also the cheapest 7-seater and brings carpet, a wireless phone charger, multi-terrain select, which specifically adapts the drivetrain to suit terrain you're driving on, and brings in key safety features including front and rear parking sensors, blind spot monitoring and rear cross-traffic alerts. The VX had become the most popular trim level with the 200 series, and you can now pick it by its shinier wheels, silver grille and more stylised DRL headlights. On the inside, it swaps the cloth for synthetic leather seat trim, adds highlights like the bigger 12.3-inch multimedia screen and 10-speaker audio, 4-zone climate control, heated and ventilated front seats, a sunroof, and 4-camera surround view. Interestingly, this is the cheapest model with auto wipers and reverse auto braking to protect from colliding with static objects. Look for the chrome mirrors to pick a Sahara over a VX, and it feels a bit odd that you've got to spend more than $130,000 to get leather seat trim with the Sahara. And that's also the case for a head-up display and power tailgate. Other luxury details include second-row entertainment screens and 14-speaker audio, electric folding for the third row of seats, a cool box in the centre console as per Sahara tradition, heated steering wheel, and the second row also scores heated and ventilated seats. The GR Sport is next on the price tree, but shifts its philosophy from the Sahara's luxury to more of a sporting or adventure flavour. This means black details and the classic TOYOTA on the grille, plus a bunch of GR badging, but also a bunch of unpainted plastic to make it more rugged when you're off-road. It's also only got 5 seats and loses the rear seat screens, which makes it ideal for mounting a fridge and a set of drawers in the boot for touring. Further supporting this notion are front and rear diff locks, and it's the only model to get the clever EKDSS active sway bar system for allowing more suspension travel on rough terrain. The top of the range Sahara ZX is about the same price as the GR Sport, but has a more glitzy look with bigger 20-inch wheels, so it seems to be the LandCruiser if you want to spend a lot of time around town, ironically. One of the most recent 300 series announcements has been the factory accessories range, which is ready to go with a choice of new and improved bull bars and nudge bars, a winch, recovery points, roof carrying systems, in addition to the usual optional extras. As always, these factory accessories are your best chance to retain all safety and mechanical functions, not to mention your warranty. The new 300 series' overall proportions look very similar to the 14-year-old 200 series it replaces, but Toyota insists it's a clean sheet design from top to bottom. I actually have a feeling the bonnet release lever is a carryover, but I'm yet to verify this, and everything else seems like a step forward to push its all-rounder status to greater heights than ever. Australia has once again played a key role in its development, with the first prototype touching down in 2015. Toyota says that in addition to Australia being a key market for the 300 series, we offer engineers access to 80% of the world's driving conditions. The new body is both stronger and lighter than before thanks to using aluminium for the roof and opening panels, plus high tensile steel, and rides on a new separate chassis with redesigned mechanical elements that have been relocated to give a lower centre of gravity while offering more ground clearance. Nonetheless, it is still a big car, and combined with its requirements for ruggedness, it was always going to be a heavy outcome, with all versions tipping the scales near the 2.5 tonne mark, which makes it one of the heaviest cars on the market.
On the inside, the new LandCruiser is bang up to date, and even the base GX is full of materials that feel like the top quality you'd expect, and Toyota has paid a lot of attention to ergonomics this time around, with all the controls nicely laid out, and it's pretty clear they've put function ahead of form, unlike a lot of other off-roaders. There's also plenty of physical button controls, which I'd very much prefer over hiding controls within sub-menus on the touchscreen. This particular model is the Sahara, which is the cheapest model in the range to get leather on the seats. The VX model upwards gets this nice and big 12.3-inch touchscreen, where the GX and GXL get a smaller 9-inch unit. Similarly, the VX upwards get a 7-inch display ahead of the driver, where lesser models get a 4.2-inch display. On that note, it's somewhat surprising to see analog gauges across the range, where so many other new models are going for full digital instrumentation. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, it's up to you. Another thing that's surprisingly missing in 2021 is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, even though all bar the base GX get a wireless charge pad for your phone. Now, all of them do get corded Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but these are in cars costing up to $140,000.
Being a big SUV, practicality is a big deal, and just to reiterate, it's only the GXL, VX and Sahara that have 7 seats, with the base GX and the top tier GR Sport and Sahara ZX only having 5 seats.
As you'd expect, there's decent storage space on all versions, and there's at least 6 cup holders across the range, plus the all-important bottle holder in each door. All bar the base GX get ample USB point coverage, and all versions get a 12-volt point in the front and the back, and all versions also get a really handy 220-volt inverter. The second row is where things get really clever. Now, even though the new one still rides on the same wheelbase as the 200 series, Toyota's managed to move the second row seats back, enabling another 92mm of legroom back here, which has never been a problem for 172cm Mal, but will be great for taller passengers. And parents will love the fact that there's the usual 3 top tether points for child seats, plus 2 ISOFIX points. Climbing into the third row is never going to be easy given how far off the ground you are, but it's pretty good with the second row tumbled forward, and thankfully the smaller part is on the passenger side. Once you're back here, there's decent room for adults of average height. You can see out the windows quite easily, which is not always the case. Also, there's good ventilation for your face, head and feet. You can recline the backrests electronically, and there's a cup holder for each passenger. Now, back here are another couple of changes over the LandCruisers of old. First of which is the one-piece tailgate, now across the range, so no more split tailgate or barn doors, which is good for 2 reasons. First is that it enables you to have a big one-piece seal, which is really good for preventing dust getting in, and also, when it's up, it makes for a handy shelter. The other big change over previous LandCruisers is that the third row of seats finally folds flat into the boot floor, which is so much less awkward than the previous arrangement where they used to fold up and to the side and block your view while you're driving.
Moving the second row closer to the rear has contributed to a significant reduction in overall boot space, with the third row folded figure dropping by 272 litres VDA to 1004, but it is still a big, tall space, and the fact that the third row now folds into the floor has liberated an extra 250mm of boot width.
And as per LandCruiser tradition, there's a full-size spare mounted underneath the boot floor.
Payload figures weren't a 200 series strong suit, so it's good to see that these have improved by a useful 40 to 90 kilos across the range. Note the numbers still vary by up to 135 kilos depending on trim level, so pay close attention if you plan on carrying heavy loads. Speaking of heavy loads, the maximum brake tow rating is still the benchmark 3.5 tonnes, and all trim levels come with an integrated tow receiver, and Toyota boasts that the 300 series does a better job of towing within that limit. The new 300 series is yet to score an ANCAP safety rating, but there's curtain airbags covering all rows of seats, which properly cover third row occupants. Also beyond the norm are side airbags up front and in the second row, plus knee bags for both front occupants. There's no centre airbag up front, but a car this wide doesn't necessarily need it to score top marks from ANCAP. Watch this space. On the active safety front, highlights for all models include front auto emergency braking that has all the right smarts and is impressively active all the way between 10 and 180 km an hour. Note that the base GX misses out on key safety features including front and rear parking sensors, blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alerts. Only the VX model upwards get rear auto braking for static objects, and I can confirm it works a treat.
Yes, the V8 is dead, in the 300 series at least, and don't forget you can still get the single turbo V8 in the 70 series. Now, the new LC300s, all new 3.3 litre twin turbo diesel V6, paired with the new 10-speed torque converter automatic transmission, they promise better performance, efficiency and refinement.
The new engines move to a hot V design, with both turbos mounted on top of the engine and the intercoolers moved to behind the bumper. It's more complicated than before, particularly for keeping things cool when you might be crawling over endless sand dunes in, say, the Australian outback. But Toyota engineers are confident that it will live up to all reliability expectations, and above all, I like the fact that the new engine has been designed for this car. It's not like Toyota has cut corners by adapting an engine from the Prado or Kluger, and that says a lot in this day and age. And before you ask, there's no hybrid version just yet, but there's one under development. Toyota has paid attention to efficiency at every level of this all-new design. But even with a lighter body, smaller engine, more ratios and a lot more technology, is still propelling 2.5 tonnes of tall car with big, chunky off-road tyres. So the new official combined consumption figure of 8.9 litres per 100 kilometres is only 0.6 of a litre better than the old V8 200 series, but it could be a lot worse. The 300 series' 110 litre fuel capacity is also 28 litres smaller than before, but this combined figure still suggests a very decent 1236 kilometre range between fills. During my test, I saw 11.1 litres per 100 kilometres on the trip computer after a 150 kilometre stretch of 110 km an hour motorway, so don't bank on achieving 1200 k's between fills all the time. Like all new Toyotas, the new 300 series carries a 5-year unlimited kilometre warranty, which is the status quo among mainstream brands at the moment, but the engine and driveline coverage extends to 7 years if you stick to the service schedule. Roadside assistance will cost you extra though. Service intervals are still a relatively brief 6 months or 10,000 kilometres though, but the cap price servicing plan has been extended to cover the first 5 years or 100,000 kilometres of ownership. So at a decent $375 per service, this totals an also decent $3,750 for the first 10 services.
When Byron drove the prototype version of the new 300 series earlier this year, he came away with only good impressions. And now that I've driven the finished version on and off-road, it's fair to say that Toyota's nailed the brief. Today I've covered about 450 kilometres on the highway in the new Sahara and Sahara ZX, and it's even more of a lounge room on wheels than before. It's more quiet, comfortable, and even more stable than I remember the 200 series feeling, which is some ask considering just how rugged the chassis is with this much off-road capability.
With just myself on board, the new V6 ticks over at just 1600 revs in 9th gear at 110 kilometers an hour, which is exactly the kickoff point for max torque, so it takes a big hill before it needs to drop down to 8th gear. Even in 8th, it sits on just 1800 revs at 110. What's the point of 10th gear, you might ask? Good question, as I only used it by selecting it manually, and the revs dropped down to just 1400 at 110. I can only imagine 10th comes in handy when you're sitting on 130 kilometers an hour for hours on end in the Northern Territory. I hope we can test that theory soon, but you get a good sense of capability well beyond what's needed.
It's amazing how well it can be off-road, considering it's so good on-road. We did all this on standard tyres with no modifications in a 2.5 tonne vehicle that somehow manages to shrink around you when the going gets tough.
Little things like low range, clicking in as soon as you flick the switch, play a big role here, plus driver aids like really effective hill descent control and the new generation crawl control that extracts every ounce of grip from the tyres is a lot less dramatic than it used to be. Now granted, I only managed to drive the GR Sport off-road, so its EKDSS active sway bars suggest it will be the ultimate 300 series for this sort of thing, so we'll try to follow up with proper off-road tests of other grades as soon as possible.
I also briefly towed this 2.9 tonne caravan, and while we look forward to bringing you a proper long distance tow test soon, the experience towing such a huge van back to back with these other conditions really underlines just how much of an all-rounder the new LandCruiser is. The seats are among the most comfortable in the business, visibility is really good, so I suppose the only thing I haven't managed to test today is the headlight performance. Watch this space. There's not much more to say really. The new LandCruiser 300 series seems like a better all-round package than ever before, that's so well suited to Australia's broad array of driving conditions. It's not cheap, but try and find something that does everything so well at any price. And don't forget, if you're wanting more detail, you can read my full review over at the CarsGuide site, in addition to thousands of other car reviews. And if you're wanting to keep up to date with any other new videos we publish, make sure you hit subscribe and the bell icon so you don't miss out.